Welcome to the TNT Podcast, where we dive into the stories of career trailblazers and learn about their trials and triumphs along the way. I am your host, Drew Hantla, and today we have Greg Stone, a Texas State Park police officer who has recently graduated from the Cadet Academy. On today's show, Greg details his journey through the 8-month Cadet Academy and what it takes to come out on top. He explains key factors to overcoming the high-stress environment and what to expect throughout the day-to-day. Greg takes us on a journey through his next steps post-graduation and the continued field education to come. He explains the various opportunities the officers have to grow and experience throughout the state police force. Follow along to hear more from Greg. We hope you'll enjoy. Greg, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, man. Can you kind of tell us about yourself, kind of some backstory?
Sure, yeah. My name's Greg. I'm currently a state park police officer. So, backstory, I went through, graduated Sam Houston in Huntsville with a criminal justice degree. And then from there, I was able to, once I got my bachelor's degree, I was able to apply for the Texas Game Warden Academy as a state park police officer. And I applied for state park police officer and Texas Game Warden, which is through the same academy. And went in the application process for a while with both applications until finally was picked up only by State Park Police, and that's what I've been running with.
Did Sam Houston provide anything unique in its criminal program that you felt helped you along your path?
Yeah, I mean, Sam Houston is I think the number 1 or number 2 criminal justice school in Texas, and so that definitely helped me choose the school I wanted to go to when that's what I decided I wanted to do. Their programs are just the top of the line in the state, and just all the influx of career fairs and the people that come in for all the classes and the professors there that teach all the criminal justice classes really was probably a good foundation to my application to getting into the academy.
You mentioned there that you were happy with your choice of school once you decided the path you wanted to take on. What kind of led you to believe that this was a route that you wanted to take?
Yeah, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do exactly when I went to college, but I knew I kind of wanted to do something in criminal justice. And then it wasn't until a little further into college that I decided that I knew law enforcement would be a good route for me. I always grew up kind of athletic, and being somewhere out in the field, I knew I'd be more proactive and better than just sitting behind a desk, being a criminologist or, something else where I feel like I wouldn't be able to reach my full potential. So I feel like I could do a lot more good out in the field, out in the everyday community doing stuff, but I didn't want to be a regular law enforcement officer as far as a police department or sheriff's office working in a county, just on the streets and cities and stuff. And I always grew up hunting and loving the outdoors, hiking, stuff like that. So when I found out what Texas Game Warden was, and it was the best of both worlds, it was a no-brainer. That's what I wanted to do. Whenever I applied, when I went to go apply for Texas Game Warden, which is only once a year, they do an annual application process. It's only open a month the entire year. I didn't even know State Park Police was a thing until I went to apply for Texas Game Warden, and those applications were right next to each other. And I did a little digging and saw that it was pretty much the exact same thing, except they're assigned to state parks instead of assigned to a county like a game warden would be. And so I applied for both. And like I said, eventually just came in with state parks, and that's what got me all started in that route.
Expanding a little bit on that application process, you mentioned that there was a couple opportunities you had the ability to reach out for. Could you kind of list some of those and then detail more of that application process for us?
So there's 2 different applications that Texas Game Warden and State Park Police. They're a little different. And like I was saying, the only difference is State Park Police are assigned to state parks. Game wardens are assigned to counties in Texas. So you can apply for both at the same time. They both open at the same time. It's once a year. Right now, they currently are open for all of November, and I think they're about to close in a couple days. And the whole process is you apply and you do your just basic application. Once you meet all the requirements, you have to have a basic bachelor's degree in any major. Then from there, you take a physical readiness test, which is where you just have to take a rowing test, a swim test, and a handgun stability. It's nothing crazy, but it's just a standardized physical readiness test just to make sure you're in decent shape to be able to go through the academy, and it just to knock out a few people that just aren't ready to take on that kind of academy life. And then this whole process takes about almost an entire year. So the application process opens every October, November-ish, and then the months later, they may schedule the physical readiness test that you may have to go to pass those. And then from there, if you pass that, you'll go to a interview phase, and you'll sit on a board of game wardens or a board of state park police officers, go through an interview with that. And then if you pass that, you go through a background phase. And through the background phase, which could take another month later after all the applicants have gone through it, you get assigned a investigator. That's somebody who's already out in the field, and they basically have to find out everything there is to know about you and don't lie about anything. And you just basically just be as honest as you can, and they can ask you anything. You have to provide bank statements, history, any like drugs or alcohol instances you had, any tickets and warnings or anything you had. Like, they know everything about you. That gets passed along through their chain of command. And then they eventually do a selection process, and out of all the applicants that apply, they only pick about a total of about 60 people to get in the academy in all of Texas, which is a combination of game warden cadets and state park police cadets. And then from there, the academy starts every year about October 1st. And then it's an 8-month training academy, 5 days a week. Sometimes you don't get to go on the weekends, but it's about 5 days a week. And 8 months long training until you can graduate the following summer.
And so in regards to the academy then moving forward, are you then still combined between the two opportunities? And then can you detail that academy experience for us?
So the way it's broken up is we both work for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. So it's the same agency, but essentially they're two different divisions or departments of an agency. So there's the game wardens are considered the law enforcement department, and state park police is under state parks division. Even though we're both law enforcement officers, same exact credentials, same exact training, we have the same power, authority is the exact same. The training you go through, you're not really separated in the academy. It's all together. You may have your roommate. So you have to live on site of the academy. It's held in Hamilton, Texas, just about an hour west of Waco. And it's a huge compound, about 2,000 acres. And there's dorms. So there's about 5 dorm buildings of 10 people that can hold up to 10 people each. Each room has 2 beds, so you'll have a roommate the entire time you're there. And it's like dorm life, similarly to like a military style, but you have a lot more freedoms, I feel like, you would in military style. So they kind of prepare you for how the job would be after you graduate. Is you just have a lot of freedoms, like you kind of make your own schedules, and you're not constantly have like your boss over your shoulder. You're kind of going out and doing patrols on your own or with your partner if you have one. So there's a lot of freedoms in it, but you're doing everything the same. Your roommate could be a game warden cadet, you could be a park police officer cadet, and you're doing the exact same stuff. There's no difference in the academy until you get out, and then your job's a little different. So it's kind of hard to differentiate the training because the jobs are a little different, because the Texas game warden's job's more focused on you probably deal with more wildlife and hunting cases and checking hunters and fishermen just across the county, because it's just so broad scale. You can do a lot with that. And then as a park police officer, your main focus is patrolling the state parks and keeping them safe. And of course, there's lakes, and you might be on boats and checking fishermen. And my park actually has hunting in it as well. There are certain times of the year when we close the park down for do drawn hunts. People can raffle and do hunts in the state park. So it's essentially the same job, except there's just not as much conservation enforcement in state parks. And it all really depends on where you're stationed. You can be placed anywhere in the state of Texas, and people that are stationed on the coast, on the Gulf Coast, they're doing a lot of offshore stuff. They're probably constantly on boats, checking commercial fishermen, shrimp boats, crabbers, oyster fishermen. Like, it's a whole different ball game over there. It's somebody who works in West Texas game warden, and they've got like big game ranches and not any water at all. They may never be on a boat their whole career if they stay there. So there's a lot of diversity in it as well. So Texas is such a big state that you can go all across it and travel and help each other out, and you do something different anywhere in Texas.
Digging into that kind of 8-month course, that's obviously a long time to be, away from family and live in that dorm life. Can you kind of detail out your experiences just in general, kind of maybe the things you went through and obstacles and such you had to overcome?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I could talk like forever about it because it seems like a lifetime of like being there. We started off about half and half cadets, half state parks, half game warden cadets. And there's what the day-to-day lifestyle would look like there. Academy life is every morning, 6 a.m. we would have PT, physical training. So 6 a.m. we would go, there's a gym on site. Everything we need is there. Like, you don't do much traveling unless you're going to like do boat operations or going to we don't have a pool there. So like if we do like some kind of swimming training, we'd have to go to like the local YMCA in Waco or something. But so every day there's PT in the morning. You're working out for about an hour every morning at 6 a.m. You have breakfast. They serve you breakfast. There's a dining hall. We have do a flag every morning of, saluting and raising and dropping the flags every day. All throughout the day, you can mess up on something and you might get punished for it. Like, everything's very detail oriented. You got to be very respectful to the lieutenants that are training you. And there's just so much for you to learn that you just never know what's going to happen. So there's, like I said, breakfast, you do flag detail every morning. Then we go straight into classwork. And the academy is very heavily like academics based. We do a lot of physical training, but there's so much to learn in 8 months that there's just sometimes just not enough time for everything. There's long days, long nights, because regular law enforcement academy, police academy is roughly around 5 to 6 months. And this one is, like I said, is 8 months because you have to learn everything you need to know about penal code and laws, being a law enforcement officer in Texas. And then you also, on top of that, you have to learn all the Parks and Wildlife Code, all the conservation laws, and how to deal with all that kind of stuff. So all that thrown together on top of firearms training, physical training, all that kind of stuff, just running through scenarios is a lot packed in 8 months. So you start classes at 8 a.m. every day, and that runs about 4 hours, 8 to 12, with breaks in between. Usually like every hour they'd give us a 10-minute break to walk around, get coffee, chill out, hang outside, just chat and stuff. And then we would eat lunch in the middle of the day, and then we go right back to class 1 to 5 usually. And it may not always be in a classroom, maybe doing some other kind of training. Either you're training out in the gym, doing like use of force stuff, practicing like jiu-jitsu or like grappling. You might have to, in the field, you might have to wrestle with somebody. Like, you have to learn how to fight and protect yourself and protect people. So it's not always classroom stuff, but a lot of it is. A lot of tests. It's very high standards in academics. Every test you take, I couldn't really tell you how many tests we take in the academy, but I'd say it's close to 100, if not a little more. But at least once a week. Sometimes there might be 6 a week, Monday through Friday. So the tests standards are you have to get 80 to pass. And if you don't pass, you have to retake on Saturday, which means you don't get to go home on Friday when everyone else is released for the weekend to travel back home. So there's lots of tests throughout the weeks. You have to keep up with that. And there's consequences for how many tests you can fail. Like, for instance, if you fail, I think 2 tests, there's like a remedial plan. You have to write a memo to your lieutenant why you failed and how you're not going to fail next time, kind of thing. If you fail another one, and it never starts over, so it keeps going through the whole 8 months. If you fail another one, it becomes another step in the process. Eventually, there's a certain step where you'll have to like make up your own test for that topic. So whatever, let's say you fail like a class about first aid or penal code or something in the laws, you have to, first of all, you have to retake that test. But if you fail the retake, you might have to do something that will help you learn it better. That, obviously something different since you didn't learn the second time. You might have to make your own test or start some other kind of remedial process through the lieutenants, which is not good. I mean, you definitely want to not be in that situation, especially early in the academy. And then eventually they can, if you keep not being able to pass the classes, then they eventually can make the decision to just drop you out of the class. And then you just have to go home, pack your things, leave, and possibly let you apply the next year if that's what you still want to do. So it's very stressful for the cadets. It's a long time being away from family. It can definitely be a toll on the cadets that go, and the cadets range from, you have to be at least 21 years old to be a law enforcement officer in Texas. So the cadets range from anywhere from 21, and there's really not a maximum age. So there was a guy in my class who was 51, I believe. So huge range of people that you're working with constantly. And it's just tough for everyone, really.
How do you feel that you best overcame that stress?
One of the biggest things that I think helped me and helped all my other classmates get through was having just a good support system back home, whether it be your significant other, your family, or, just friends. Just them, when your family is okay with you being there and they're supporting you along the way, it's easier for you to not have to worry about them as much, and they're doing okay and they're supporting you, and it's easier for you to get through, allowing you to focus on what you need to do to get through the academy. So that was really easy for me. I feel like I had a lot easier than some other people there. Like my wife now, we were engaged at the time. We got engaged right before I started the academy, but we didn't have any kids. We hadn't been living together yet, so it wasn't that different. And I got to see her on the weekends and got to go home to my family on the weekends. So it wasn't as bad for me, I feel like, because some people that have, are a little older or just have, younger kids that they weren't able to see all week. It's harder on those families where the husband or wife might be having to watch the kids all the time or need help from other family members to help watch their children. It's just a lot different for everybody. So I feel like if you have a good support system and your family's taken care of back home and they're just pushing you every step of the way, it's a lot easier.
To help kind of provide a reference in regards to, again, things to expect for those looking to pursue this route, it's kind of a two-part question. In relating to your athletics, how do you feel the PT related to, say, your training and stuff you did for athletics previously? And then academics, how do you feel like the academics ranked up to maybe your high school or college experience? Can you kind of answer both of those questions, if you will?
I feel like that as well is a big part of it. I grew up playing sports my entire life. I played almost everything: soccer, football, basketball, baseball. So I was always a part of some kind of team. I played a little bit of volleyball in college. So even whenever I got out of high school, I've always been a part of a team and working together with people and staying active and working out all the time. So that was a big part, and also what helped me get through it for sure, because I feel like all the people that were athletes when they were younger and all the people that continued that kind of lifestyle just excelled in physical training and were able to get through that as just a daily thing and just another thing on the checklist, and then was really able to focus on the police training and the academics of the academy. And it was really just something you checked off in the morning or checked off in the afternoon. If we were still doing 2-a-days like we did at the beginning of the academy, we would work out in the mornings, and then after class at 5, we would have another workout before we'd go to dinner, and then have our free time in the evenings. So that's how the first few months started, mostly just to weed out the weaker links, I guess, to say, people that couldn't take that kind of mental and physical strain. So yeah, growing up, working out and being a part of all sorts of different sports teams was huge. I feel like I excelled in that portion of the academy for sure. And then high school and college, I guess, helped the ways that I wasn't like the best student in high school and college. So I still was able to get through fairly easily in the academics just because mostly my college experience, I would say, just learning throughout college how to study and what you need to study and how to take notes. If you just can apply yourself and, take the time to study whatever the topic is in the evenings and maybe not waste your free time hanging out, going out to dinner somewhere or shooting pool, or, some people would just play cornhole in the yards and do their own thing. And if you really applied yourself and took the time to maybe sit in your dorm room, just study whatever we were learning that week, and you knew how to study, work with others, use your resources. That's another thing. Not just knowing how to take notes and how to study, but also to use your resources. That was the next big thing I was going to say. The other people that were in the academy with you, they went through so many different experiences themselves that you can use as help. So there was a handful of people in my academy that were prior law enforcement officers, either at other agencies across the state or even other states. There was a couple of people from that moved from California. There was a girl that was a law enforcement officer in Arizona, and just their experiences and them taking these similar classes before this academy helped them a lot. And you could, ask them questions, and just getting close to your neighbors and peers in the academy was a big help also. Just working with them and picking their mind about certain things and helped me a lot get through those academic classes.
Do you feel like your college experience in the criminal justice program prepared you for the academy? And then the next step, do you feel like the academy prepared you then for the actual field work once you guys graduate?
Oh yeah, for sure. Graduating with a criminal justice degree definitely helped through all of the legal classes we took, all learning the actual books of the laws and penal code and the health and safety codes and arrest, search and seizure, stuff like that. All the legal stuff that you need to know as a law enforcement officer, you need to be a master of. Everybody looks at you as the expert on these kind of topics, and you have to know what you're doing to be good at your job, and you have to know what you're doing to not get yourself in legal trouble. You don't want to be, abusing your power and, taking away people's rights when you shouldn't. So that's a big thing that you need to learn. And that's something that I studied a lot of in college, taking criminal justice courses. That definitely helped a lot. So all those classes that we took were more refreshers, I guess, for me. And so some people that didn't have that criminal justice background in college or in their past work experiences, that was all new material to them. So that was probably something they struggled with if they didn't have any of those experiences, learning those firsthand. The instructors that teach the academy are very knowledgeable. They've all been in the field for many, many years, some close to 20. And then I think some of the youngest, maybe 7-8 years, but lots of big experiences. So they know what they're doing, and everything we do is for a reason, and they do a really good job of preparing you for the real life experiences you're going to come across in the field. One of the biggest things that helped me, I feel was the scenarios we would do. So we would do we would bring in role players, which would be other field officers, other field wardens that are already out working. They would come in and play a role of setting up a hunting camp or a duck hunting camp or campsite in a state park. And they would just pretend like they're a visitor or a hunter, and you would just roll up on them as if you would in the real world, actually drive your truck out there, interact with them like you would in the real world, and they would be in character, and they would not cut back on anything. They were handing you every little thing to make it hard for you, calling you names, cussing you out, just questioning your authority, just seeing how you would react to what people will do in real life. So those, I feel were the biggest things that really put it in perspective and helped in the real world, because all the training that you do in the academy, you just fall back toward them when you see that kind of scenario happen in real life after graduation. You're oh, I had a scenario on this. This is similar to what I went through already before. So it's not the first time I've seen it. You just always fall back to your training, and that's easy to say, but it really is that easy. Is just remember what you've been trained, and it just pops in your head that way.
Do you feel like your experience the first couple of months maybe brought some unique aspects you feel like you need to mention, or was it really just once you got out there, you were just ready to go?
Definitely was not just ready to go. I mean, it's very different being out. You're not as like critiqued. In the academy, there's constant critiquements as like far as them standing over your shoulder, like writing down every little thing you're doing wrong in a scenario. But dealing with real people is different. And of course, there's just different stuff that you just can't make in a scenario. Like there's just real stuff you can't. The scenarios can only get so real without being real. I mean, you just never know if someone's going to have an actual weapon. And obviously, you're not going to have role players coming in the academy and shooting real guns at you or anything if somebody was had to do that. There are definitely some trainings in the academy where we used simunition rounds and guns. So they're essentially powder-based projectile rounds that you put in these, I guess you could still call them firearms, but they're not actual bullets that you're shooting. And we would do scenarios with those. They essentially feel like getting shot with like a paintball gun, if you've ever had that happen before. So it hurts, but like you're not actually getting shot, of course. So there's lots of extremes that we go through to train as real as you can. But going out into the field, obviously there's so much to learn even after you graduate. And so how it kind of works after graduation is you're in 1 year of being a probationary officer, which is what I'm still in right now. I just graduated in beginning of June. So I'm only about 5-6 months out. And so this probationary year after graduation is you'll have to be assigned a field training officer. You will be with that field training officer. Basically, there's 3 phases of field training. You'll be with them for phase 1. You are just riding along, basically. You are obviously already a commissioned peace officer in Texas, but for the first phase, you're just essentially riding along and shadowing that field training officer. And you do 80 hours of that, which sounds like it would be just 2 weeks, right? 2 work weeks. But it's essentially only 80 hours of actual training. So anytime you're patrolling or maybe you're running radar or stuff like that, and you're not actually in a contact with somebody or something that actually aids your training, it doesn't really count towards those hours. Essentially, 80 hours in that phase takes about a month or 2 to hit. So someday I may work a 10-hour shift, but I may only get 2 or 3 hours of field training from my field training officer. And if it's really busy and we're constantly with people or working a car accident all day, he may give me 6 hours for that day. So it takes some time to get through the phases. And after phase 1, you go, phase 2 is a lot more normal, like basically what you'll be doing when you're not a probationary officer anymore. And you're basically just trading off with your field training officer. So he may make a contact with somebody and, check fishing licenses or, come talk to this campsite about something or this person who's breaking the law or pulls this person over. And then the next time you are going to make a contact, I would take over and I would be the officer in charge, and he would become like the cover officer just next to me. So that's what phase 2 is. And it's the same 80 hours of just doing that. And then the final phase of it, called the ghost mode, basically the field training officer is now with you still, but he's shadowing you and you're not supposed to ask him for any kind of help. And this is basically the final phase of the field training after graduation, where they are just watching you and letting you do your thing. Obviously, they'll step in if there's something you're doing really wrong, like abiding somebody's rights, or if you're doing something super unsafe, they'll step in. But for the most part, they're just going to stay there like they're not even there, and they just let you do your thing and give you 80 hours of that. Once you go through all of those phases, then you graduate the field training, and then you are now able to be on your own. So that's kind of how it looks after graduation. That's why there's such a difference once you get out. Like, there's so much more to learn when you're actually out in the field, that they have this whole field training program that you have to go through before you're actually on your own.
While we're on this topic, do you feel like there's maybe 1 or 2 things that you've learned during this probation period that you feel like would really help someone else be aware of as they pursue this?
Yeah. So far, I'm currently at the end of my phase 2. So I'm about to start the last phase after I get like my captain to ride along with me for a couple hours to check me off. I'm basically the ghost phase where I'm going to be on my own and not supposed to ask my field training officer for any help. But so far, I feel like what this has helped me with is just gaining my confidence in being a law enforcement officer and gaining my confidence in talking to the public and park visitors or any just civilians in general as an officer, and just taking control of scenes and just knowing your rights and your authority and knowing what you can and can't do with people is probably the biggest thing, which you can't really practice in the academy because you're not dealing with real people. Like you're doing scenarios, but you in the back of your head you know that it's a scenario and you know this is not a real situation going on. But when you're out in the real field, it takes a little bit of getting used to, telling people what to do, just being in control of every situation that you're going into. Takes a little bit of time to get used to, but I feel like that's been the biggest thing of this field training program.
Could you kind of explain to us the potential progression path you have available?
Yeah, so there's lots of potential things you can do working as a state park police officer for Texas Parks and Wildlife. Like I was saying earlier, the opportunities just to transfer to different parts of the state is one huge thing that's so easy. Coming out of the academy, when you're assigned to your duty station, you have to be there for at least 1 whole year before you can transfer out. And after your 1 year, you can essentially go wherever there's an opening, and there's constantly openings changing and closing and opening back up, and people retiring, people leaving, and just you never know. So there's constantly transfer options. And like I was saying, is you can go to one part of the state and do something completely different and go to the other part of the state and do something different every day than what you're used to. It might even take a whole lot of getting used to and different trainings to accommodate for what you might run into over there. But as far as state parks go, they're essentially the same, being they're all kind of structured the same way, I guess, because even though you might be on the coast, you're still within a state park most of the time. They mostly all have campsites and campgrounds, maybe swimming areas and trails, but each state park is just a little different its own way. Like there's some state parks off the coast, like Mustang Island State Park is off of a beach, and so like you may be doing beach patrols and people going out there working in the Gulf. You may be up like where I am in Central Texas, and we just have the hill country and rivers and all sorts of trails, and there's so many trails in my state park. There's so many search and rescues we do, people getting lost, heat exhaustion, people being out, not knowing where they are, not having enough water, and you may not deal with that as much as people obviously just hanging out on the beach, not getting lost as much, but there's so much more of that happen within the state parks that have huge hiking trails and huge areas like that. So there's really so much difference in all the different state parks you can go to. Another thing that there's also so much different special teams in the agency that you can join throughout your career. So as a field officer, and I guess I should break that down first, there's different ranks you can go up as you progress in the agency. So you start off as a field officer after you get through your probationary year. And then after 4 years, you can apply for different positions as a sergeant. So if you wanted to, not be in the field as much, if you wanted to kind of get over a certain amount of people, you could rank up, promote to a sergeant. And then after 6 years, you could promote up to a lieutenant. And then I think 8 years, you could promote to a captain. And then after 10 years, after captain, you can promote to a major. And then there's only one chief, which is above the major, which you have to have at least 12 years of experience in the agency. And how those kind of work is a sergeant is over the district. So the district has about, depending on where you are in the state, about anywhere from 3 to maybe 6 parks in this little area of the state. And you're just kind of in control of certain logistics and administration stuff over those officers in your district, and basically a middleman from the officers and the captain of your region. And there's the major above them, which is just the same thing, just higher up, more duties. I couldn't really tell you exactly what they do, but they're not. The higher you go up, the more office position, I guess you would say it is. So a lot of people work their whole careers, 20 years of just being a field officer because they love it so much and they don't want to be behind the desk. As you go up, you can progress to the different promotional stages of sergeant, captain, and major, which would be over the entire region. And then there's one chief for all those state parks who's just over everybody and does a lot of stuff that I couldn't even go to explaining. But there's a lot of the promotional stages you could do, which with that you could also depends on the openings throughout the different areas in the state of the state parks. And what I was about to get into was, as a field officer, you can also apply and get into different special units in the agency. And what's cool about the special units in the agency is a lot of them are tied with the game wardens as well. So some of the special units we have is like we have a canine team, we have a marine tactical team, which is mostly out on boats and doing a lot more work with casework on the coast, I guess. And we have a drone team, we have search and rescue team, dive team, lots of different opportunities in that aspect. So there's definitely has a big change to what you do every day. Is you might get called out for certain things if you're on the dive team, whether it be search or recovery of, if there's a drowning somewhere and that you need to travel to go help with that. If there's nobody around, that's a part of the dive team. Search and rescue, swift water. If there's, floods and hurricane that happen, then you might get called out for those things. So there's lots of teams and different tactical units that you can join as a field officer, can progress you throughout your job.
Detailing out kind of how the specialty teams work with your career, are you still a field officer and you're just kind of tied to a team? So as a team is called, you then kind of have a shared responsibility, if you will? Or is the team structured whereas you're just on that team, so you're just doing calls for that team? Can you kind of detail out that kind of relationship for us?
Yeah, so it kind of depends which unit or team you're on. So some of them are a little different. Like my partner is on the Swiftwater team and he does everything I do. We just are regular field officers that, we patrol our park. We can go, help nearby parks and stuff. But that is his is essentially you can get called out to do certain things with the Swiftwater team. And so they're, all throughout the state. So there's some located across the state, which would mean depending on where the circumstances are, they could be called out whoever's, closer or whichever group is closer. And some teams you are strictly just doing whatever you're called out to do for that team. So like, I think like the canine teams, they're almost strictly getting called out for canine stuff. They're not usually, if there's a game warden who's on the canine team, he's not usually just working deer hunters and during the hunting season or going and checking fields when there's duck hunters. He's usually either training with the dog or doing something canine related and is getting called out for specific things that way, as far as tracking for a lost person in a park, a lost person who's out in the woods, finding drugs somewhere. Like it's just always getting called out for those things depending on what team you're on. So certain teams you'd be doing regular stuff until you're called out for something related to that, and certain teams you're constantly training and getting called out for those duties.
Could you detail out for us a salary compensation that someone could be aware of as just kind of the field officer role, and then just taking on additional roles like those specialty teams, or obviously maybe just chasing more of the title ladder, if you will? Kind of how does that scale adjust?
Yeah, so I'm not completely sure if or how the salary changes throughout the different teams you're on or the different kind of trainings you do. I believe they're the same as long as you're still the same, like field officer. Like obviously when you join a tactical unit or the canine team, you can progress and be a sergeant of the canine team and stuff. But essentially if you're on the canine team and you're still a field officer, you're still getting that field officer salary and pay. But I'll see if I can pull it up real quick because they just recently changed, but it is open to the public. And since it is a state job, you can look it up online and they do tell you exactly what the salary ranges are. So like how the scale works is when you're in the academy, you're getting paid in the academy. As soon as you're hired on and earn your spot, right now, a cadet has a salary of about 51,000 a year. And that's obviously before taxes and benefits and stuff like that get taken out. But and then as soon as you get your probationary year, you go into about 55,000 a year. As soon as you graduate from your probationary year, and like I said, it's 3 phases of 80 hours, but you still are in that probationary pay until a full year on the calendar. It's not like once you finish your 3 phases, it changes. It's you have to go the whole year, even if you are on your own already for months before that. So once you graduate the probationary year and you're regular field officer, it goes from 55 to 65,000 a year, 65.8, and then that's the standard all the way around. So that's what every field officer is making under 4 years of service. Because after that, you progress for your years of service, and it's actually a pretty good jump as you progress in your years of service with the agency, even if you don't promote. So as you're a field officer and you're starting off field officer less than 4 years of experience at 65, once you hit 4 years of service, it goes to 80,000 salary. And then once you hit 8 years, it goes to 85, 12 years, 89, 16, 93,000 a year, 20 years, 98. So just being a field officer and not even promoting throughout your career, you're hitting almost 100,000 a year for your salary if once you've been, working in commission for 20 years of service. So that's pretty good, and that's new as of this fiscal year, starting this past September 1st. State Park Police just joined what we call Schedule C, which is the same pay scale as the game wardens and what DPS troopers make in Texas. So things are like slowly getting better, and this is like a great time to work for state parks. We've now just joined the Schedule C, so we're on the same scale as wardens, and this is what DPS goes off of as well. So it's a big year for state parks for sure, and that was a big jump that they've been trying to do for a long time, and so I kind of got into it like at the perfect time. So it couldn't have been better for that aspect of it. But so the way the kind of scale works is you get a pretty good jump throughout every 4 years of experience and raises. And then there's also a pretty decent jump as you're promoted if you decide to go that way and are able to promote throughout your career. So, I mean, like I said, if you're working less than 4 years as an officer, or at least 4 years as an officer, you're at 80. And then from there, you can, like I said, you could promote to sergeant. So that would go up from, let's say you promoted to sergeant after hitting your 4 years, you would go from 80 to 89. And then if you wanted to go up to sergeant to lieutenant, that goes from 89 to 108. And that's starting at 8 years of service, because you have to have at least 6 years before you can even apply for a lieutenant. And so it's kind of confusing if you want to jump around the scale, because you obviously get a raise if you promote, but then you also get another raise if you hit that next 4 years. So there's a big scale that you can anybody can just look it up. You can just Google the salary scale of Texas game wardens and state park police officers, and it'll show you the scale, and it breaks it down all the way up to what the chief makes, and depending on their years of service. Like if you're the chief for 20 years, it's 149, basically 150K a year, having 20 years of service, and it just kind of varies from there.
You mentioned there for a little bit that there's obviously some things changing and improving over the time. Do you see more things becoming better over time? Like, are there still things in the future that they plan on implementing? And then with that, do you see kind of a boom or decline currently in regards to people coming and pursuing this route?
Yeah, so I definitely see there's a lot of big things coming to the agency, not specifically just state parks, but like I was saying, it was a big year for the state parks, being able to pass that bill and getting state park police officers on that Schedule C as the same pay raise with as our counterparts, the game wardens. So that was big for us, and that was a big difference that, people were only pursuing the game warden route and, not as many applicants going for state parks. So like, oh, why would I do that when I could make more being a game warden and stuff? So that kind of helps even the playing field, even though we work together hand in hand all the time anyway, and we all work with each other and we're all friendly with each other. It's not a big battle of, against each other, but that definitely did help our case with applicants trying to differentiate what routes they want to take and stuff, because obviously money is a big factor in the job people go for. And even though it shouldn't be the biggest reason you apply for a job, but it is something that people are going to, look at when they're applying. But that was a big thing. There's just so many things in the works. State Parks just celebrated their centennial year, 100 years of state parks this year. And so there's, huge events, just getting more publicity for state parks. And that went on, and so many more recognition. I don't know if you followed the last state election we just had a couple weeks ago, voting about the funding for state parks was in there. And state parks just got approved this multi-billion-dollar bill to help build more state parks and help fund more growth in already built state parks. And so that's another huge thing that's going to happen over many years to come. Is there's already a few more state parks in the works being built soon in the next 5 or 6 years, and expanding on some other parks a little wider. And so that's one thing that's going to help revenue and publicity and drawing more visitors to parks every year to just help us grow and grow and grow the next 100 years again.
So essentially, there's a lot of funding coming to the state. There's a lot of then new parks going to be developed, which then means new jobs and so forth, which essentially puts the career moving forward in a better position than it even is now.
For sure, yeah. It's definitely growing, and that projects a lot more position than what it is now. It's better than it's ever been, and like I was saying, this is like the best time that for me to get into it. It's growing so much that there's so much more opportunities for like you were saying, new positions and new openings. But it requires more people. But if we have so little applicants, there's just it almost makes it even more of an understaffing, I guess, if you will. With people retiring, people are getting older, people who have been doing it forever are dropping, and we can only get so many new applicants, so many new cadets a year. Especially with new positions opening up, but the new ones need to be filled with people leaving. We're definitely understaffed throughout the state as far as resources needed through different parks. To be honest, there's certain state parks that don't have any officers, and there's some reasons for that as far as like their size and the need for them. But obviously, we would like to see an officer in every state park, at least one. Some as big as like Garner State Park. Everybody knows what Garner is, and it's huge. There's 4 officers there, and there's 2 in mine at Pedernales Falls State Park in Blanco County. So many of them have 2, 3, 4, but like some only have 1 officer working at state park, and some have 0 just because of the need elsewhere and the opportunities. So definitely we are growing, and there's a lot more opportunities, but we definitely need to bring in a lot of people. So that's good. Also, it's a good problem to have, I guess.
Wrapping up here, do you feel like there's maybe one key note you want to leave with, whether you've mentioned or not? Do you feel like there's something that, hey, this is a major thing to take with you as we kind of end today's podcast?
Yeah, so I guess like the one thing I would want to put out there is for anybody who's trying to get into this career field is to, like I said, do your research in what you need to do. Like I said, there's only one shot a year to get into the academy. It's very strenuous and it's very competitive. Know what you have to do, know what the physical readiness test is and everything you have to do to pass it. And I feel like if you just apply yourself and you know what you have to do to get through it, and to get through each little phase and check off the box, go to the next step, pass this, go to the next step. It's really not too bad. You can just take your time, do your research, know what you're getting into. The second thing I would say is to not give up if this is really something you want to do. And I know people who were in my academy who this was their 7th time applying to get into it, and they finally got into it. Just don't give up if it's really something you want to do. If you don't get in the academy, maybe you don't get through the application process the first time you apply or the second or third time you apply, definitely get some experience, figure out something that could help you your next go around. So some things you can do is try to do some ride-alongs, get to know your local state park police officers, your local game wardens, do some internships with the agency. Maybe if you have to get some law enforcement experience, if that could help, definitely for sure. Join. I mean, if it's easier to just join a local PD for a couple of years, get some law enforcement experience, and then if it's still something you want to do, apply for the academy again, and you'll have a lot better shot having some more experience on your belt.
Since you mentioned the possible need to continue education to prepare yourself, do you have any favorite books that helped you along your way, or a podcast, or any kind of education material that you maybe would recommend for someone trying to pursue this? Yeah,
for sure. One book actually they actually assigned to us before we started the academy, once we got hired to be a cadet, was called Extreme Ownership by Jocko. It's just a book from a prior military background that just helps you grow as a human being, and to take what the title is, extreme ownership, in everything that you do, and don't blame others or don't blame circumstances for your situation that you're in, and taking extreme ownership in every little thing and doing what you need to do to fix that or better that takes you a long way in life. And so that was one thing that helped prepare my mind, just the mental stuff of the academy.
Sweet, Greg. Hey, man, we appreciate you coming on today. You've definitely provided everything that we can to help prepare these next group of cadets, man. We appreciate you coming on today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
If you enjoyed today's episodes, then feel free to explore the rest of our offerings with the Brothers Frontier Studio. If you're not already, you can follow us at Brothers Frontier on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. With new shows every week and daily content on our socials, we hope you'll find what you're looking for. If you haven't already, please leave us your feedback with a comment or rating to let us know what you thought of today's episode. Thanks for listening. We hope to catch you on our next episode of the TNT Podcast. I'll see you guys later.